What's the future for Florida?
We're looking at something happening I've never seen before. There's people leaving Florida. There's never been as many people leaving Florida than there is right now. Buyers have slowed up. Builders are overbuilding. Inventory is skyrocketing. Price decreases, same thing, skyrocketing. I've never seen anything like it. Florida is like the Wild West.
The real estate industry is the Wild West, my friend. I think we have a rude awakening coming for real estate agents on a nationwide level. Affordability is getting worse. People are in deep shit, man. Buyers just can't afford the payments. And you guys have property taxes that are skyrocketing. You have hurricanes that have knocked people out of houses. It is just the beginning of a massive crisis in Florida. Hey, Phil, welcome back.
Hey, good to see you, Todd.
Can you tell us what's happening in the Florida housing market?
Yeah. I've never seen anything like it. Inventory is skyrocketing, tripling, doubling, and price decreases, same thing. Builders are overbuilding. The migration has slowed down so much. Buyers have slowed up. We're looking at something happening I've never seen before.
So it's as bad as we're hearing in the news?
I think it's worse. And the reason for that is the numbers that you're seeing in the news and what they're reporting on is about a month and a half ago, numbers being reported by NAR. The numbers that you'll see when we talk about it currently, like the last 7 days, are so much worse than what was going on a month and a half ago. And I think when we get a little bit further in the future, you're going to see the numbers reported that are accurately now.
Yeah, and what he's talking about with NARS, the National Association of Realtors, and we have lagging data numbers. I mean, like Phil is mentioning, it takes, depending on where you are, we're not getting the month prior until the 16th of the following month. So just for context, Phil, tell everyone what your footprint is in Florida, where you're covering, and how long you've been doing this.
Absolutely. I've been in the business more than 25 years. I have a real estate school, which, we teach the education, certify people so they can get licensed. And I'm also a brokerage. We're in Florida, North Carolina, and Tennessee. And here in Florida, my headquarters is in Jacksonville. However, I have agents throughout the state. And I'm in Fort Lauderdale, Naples, Tampa. We have properties in Daytona Beach. We have listings throughout the state. So we actually work the state of Florida. We're not just in a local area.
So, and again, just to reiterate, because a lot of times people are ignorant to what they hear on shows like ours and what they're hearing in mainstream news. And we get a lot of comments, especially after a show with you, which we have numerous shows that we have done over the last couple of years. But, really, we get a lot of comments saying that you're not telling the truth, that, you're in Florida, you're seeing it, you see the real data. What do you say to the people that are saying that, the data that you're providing is not true?
Yeah, the numbers don't lie. People do. And it's a fact. The numbers that we're going to go over are factual. It's not about lying. It's about taking the facts and the statistics and analyzing them. Listen, right. At the end of the day, people act on emotion. Okay, they don't act on fact. Look at the world. And the fact is, if people understood what was going on, okay, there would never, ever, ever be a crash.
Describe that. You've said that before, but that's kind of confusing to people.
Yeah. Okay. So what I mean by that is if people were able to see what was happening and weren't overpaying and were negotiating properly and didn't have the fear of missing out of things, and if they focused on the numbers, I mean, you have 12,000 listings hitting the market in a week. Things are building up. And what I mean by that is if you see the numbers and the stats and you act accordingly, you're going to protect yourself from a crash. I mean, it works in the stock market. It works in the real estate market. The statistics.
Yeah, but what is that how did the people know that when they were overbidding on properties because, that you were having 50 people in an open house and standing room only and 25, 30 offers on one property? What would they have known then that would have prevented the price escalation?
Sure. When you had that market, you had maybe 1,500 properties hitting the market in 7 days. You had closings way above 10,000 closings a month. The inventory was so low. Now the buyers have slowed down. The inventory is 12,000 a week. So if you're seeing, right now there's about 10 houses for every buyer. A year and a half ago, there was 3 buyers for every house. So if you look at those numbers, and I mean, you had 12,000 price drops in the last 7 days. Now, if there's 12,000 price drops in the last 7 days, there's something not happening. And as an educated consumer, your agent, your broker should be showing you that. Every time I do a listing, I show my listing appointment, hey, this is what's happening in the last 7 days. Every time I'm working with a buyer, hey, this is what's happening in the last 7 days. And depending on what side you're representing, it's a different conversation. That's where you're at.
But we'll dive into that because I want to hear what you're telling people. Are you getting? I mean, as far as sales, sales are down.
Sales are definitely down.
Are you getting concerned at that financially as a broker, as someone that has office rent that has bills? Are you getting concerned?
I'm not too concerned about it because what I'm working with my sellers, like I'm reducing prices today on a number of listings. Taking listings has become easier because there's a lot of clients that are upset and angry with not being told the truth and canceling deals with agents. So taking the listings when you present properly has become easier. Getting them sold has been a challenge. I'll give you an example. I just had an offer come in. We have a 5-bedroom house built 7 years ago, fully furnished, has a 4.875 assumable mortgage. Okay. We were 15 grand apart. The buyer walked away and we're priced about 10 grand under market.
What's the price?
It's $395,000. We came down to 390. They started at 370. We got to 375 with them and they actually walked away. It was turnkey, almost a brand new house. Really great condition.
You weren't beating that into your seller's brain to take their offer?
Well, what's the
next price cut?
But here's the problem. The seller, we are already 10 grand under market. The seller has to be at 390 minimum to walk away because she doesn't have much equity in the home.
Or she keeps it and loses even more.
Or she keeps it and keeps the house and stays in Florida. Yeah. That's her option. Yeah. But she's at the point now where, she doesn't want to come to closing with money.
When did she buy the house?
She bought the house new when it was built. But she refined. This was 2018 when it was built. Now, here's the thing. She refinanced it at 4.875%. She had some situation where she, had to pay some things. And now she just doesn't want to come to closing. But I couldn't understand this. You got a fully furnished house. Okay, your fully furnished house, 390 when the appraisal's, 400, 405. I mean, I looked at every comp. There's still new ones being built around it. With a 4.875%, and the buyer walked away for $15,000. I mean, look at that.
I can't say I blame them. I wouldn't want somebody's furniture anyway, but I mean, that's
they wanted it. That's the thing. Yeah. They wanted it.
Well, they didn't want it that bad. So, I mean, what we're talking about is two different things. We're talking about buyers overpaying. We know they have over the last several years. The exuberance is over. They rule the roost. And you know what? The sellers are greedy. It is not a buyer's fault that you decided to refinance your house a year or two afterwards because your debt level was too high and you needed more cash, and it's not the buyer's fault that you yanked it out. And I see both sides of it.
But I do too. But here's the situation there. Think about this. They're talking about a $1,300 a month payment less. 4.875 instead.
If you had the cash, to
there's only 20 grand cash plus closing because there's no equity. Yeah. It's actually it's like a dream come true for the right person. But we're already 10 grand.
Unless prices go down another $50,000-$70,000, which they just might.
I agree. There's a big problem coming.
Then you're better off with the 6.5% finance rate because, and what I try and tell people, Phil, and you know this to be a fact, the payment doesn't mean jack squat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you have to be able to pay it, but your interest rate, if you have to sell the house it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to pass that low interest rate along to the next buyer. What really matters in real estate is it's a buy low, sell high game. It's the way it's been forever. That's how a lot of homeowners have made their wealth, have accumulated their wealth through the years, is because they took advantage of price appreciation.
Yeah.
Well, now we're buying still at the top of the market, in my opinion. Affordability is getting worse. People are in deep shit, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about credit card delinquencies have skyrocketed. Credit card debt is skyrocketing. People are paying. They have a $70,000 a year job and a $60,000 car. All right, that they paid 60 grand they're financing for 7 years, and their car's worth half of that at best. So they've made a lot of bad decisions, and now it's time to pay the piper. But let's get back to your financial position, because I know locally here, there have been a lot of brokers that have spent a boatload of money thinking the sky would never fall, building $500,000 build outs in office space that no one shows up. Their agents don't come.
Yeah.
Their staff is being laid off because sales are down. Tell me what your agents are saying.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my agents are in a little different position than an average agent, because we focus strictly on listings and bringing buyers to our listings and commercial real estate. We really don't deal with buyers often now because of the new NAR, the DOJ. But agents in general, I mean, look, we're down 400,000 agents since August 17th. The agents who are showing my properties, I mean, the last one we just closed didn't have a closing since May. So, and
so how are they in a different situation?
They're scared. And a lot of them, from what I'm understanding, is they're not getting the training from the brokers about the new rules and the things going on, and they're a little like wary. I mean,
the things aren't selling; they're not making money. Do your agents have jobs?
No, my agents, no, my agents are all full time with real estate. Yeah,
and they're making enough money. They're not coming to you right now. They're not coming to you right now saying, "Hey, broker, things are really tough. Are you thinking about getting us some leads?" I mean, I'm sure your agents would love to take buyers.
Yeah, I have a group of agents that started 2 months ago, my last class, my last apprenticeship. One has 6 listings, one has 4 listings, one has 2 listings.
That doesn't do anything to the bank account.
No, but we're on track, and we're getting showings, and we're getting deals, and we're getting offers. The buyer agents, I think, are in trouble. We've talked about this before. I truly think buyer agents are going to be gone within a year and a half, man.
I'd rather have a buyer right now, honestly. I'd rather have a buyer than a seller. I mean, if I can't sell the listing and I'm got to beat my seller's, brain to take a lesser price, if you're a buyer and you can buy right now, you are golden. I think you're gonna be able to write your ticket very soon.
But here's the thing: we're getting buyers coming through us as transaction brokers to represent them. They're not coming with other agents.
Look, I love you, Phil. You and I have great dialogue together. I think you have rose-colored glasses on right now. I think you're thinking that the world is great, and I don't think you guys have seen the start of it. I think when we're talking about, I want to have a conversation with you 3 months from now, because if your business doesn't pick up and your sellers don't take less money because they don't have the money to come to the table. Yeah. You're going to be like everybody else, and your agents are going to go get jobs. Because I remember living through the great financial crisis. I was an agent. I was a team. I had 9 agents at a regional brokerage, and I did, I did mostly commercial sales, but my agents were residential. And I can remember when we were going into that '08 crisis. And I was also building and developing and doing flips and rehabs, and the shit hit the fan. And it was a shock, man. I never got up in the morning and said, oh, this is going to end tomorrow. But we started seeing it in 2005. By 2008, it was a bloodbath. And agents were getting jobs because they had to, unless their spouses made all the money and they just rolled up their tent. There were a couple agents that said that they did well because of real estate owned properties, working for the banks and things like that. But I think we have a rude awakening coming for real estate agents on a nationwide level. and they're going to go get jobs. We used to. It was funny
I
because
agree with that.
if you said to somebody, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" and they said, "I'm a real estate agent," they said, "What else do you do?" Because common knowledge on the street, as brokerages were closing their doors, shutting down their offices, their leases, as everything was falling apart, which will happen again, in my opinion, because I think we let this run amok to the point of we're in a massive affordability crisis where buyers just can't afford the payments. And you guys have property taxes that are skyrocketing.
Yeah.
You have hurricanes that have knocked people out of houses. You got a disaster there. But I want to pull up this because I do want to talk about inventory.
Yeah,
I want to pull up this.
real quick. One thing I want to respond real quick to you on that. So what I want to say is, I got to tell you, as a broker, I've never had a busier year last year or been in a position where we had more listings at this point. And I mean, we just took 4 more listings this week. So
again, listings are fantastic. If they don't sell, if they don't close, it means nada. Actually, you're in worse of a position because you're paying money to market and advertise them.
Right. But listen where I'm coming from. The listings, we're pricing them and we're reducing them and we're attracting the buyers. I'm advertising directly to the buyers. And
dude, you just lost one for 15 grand.
Yeah, but
I would have been running down the street after that buyer.
Listen, you could have 1,000 listings. They don't sell. It's useless. Right.
Right.
That's a fact. Yeah, that's a fact. But the bottom line is, look, a lot of our clients, I have 2 listings that are going through divorce. I have one that's an estate. Someone passed away. Those deals are always going to be there and they're always going to transact. Even if you look at the financial crisis back in 08, 9, 10, okay? If you look back there, transactions still closed. Deals still closed.
I was buying houses at $50,000 that should have been $250,000.
Right. But listen, if you're going to be a successful agent, you must pivot and get into those deals. If not, maybe you shouldn't be in the business. And listen, you know how many agents I deal with on a daily basis that shouldn't be in the business? You know how many complaints that should be filed that haven't been? Florida is like the Wild West. I mean,
the real estate industry is the Wild West, my friend. Let's take a look at this article.
It's everywhere.
Yep. Narada published this article recently, like January 13th. So this week, talking about your state. And this is interesting. This is Real Estate Investments, Narada, their website. Inventory levels are rising, single family homes. This is shocking. So we really I've been in this industry in one format or another since 1989, serving the housing market. So as a contractor and, for many, many, many years. 4.6 month supply in September. Now, again, we're looking at backward-looking data, but the trends have gone. It's
gotten worse.
Yeah, and some of it is some properties I've seen have been taken off the market during the holiday season, and now we're seeing them come back on again. But anyway, single-family houses, Florida here. 43.8% year-over-year increase. This is really alarming because I know Florida is riddled with condos and townhouses, but we're over 7.4 month supply. This is in September. It's probably 9 or 10 months or a year's supply right now. Maybe we'll get into that when you show us. This is an 80.5% year-over-year increase. This is alarming because once you get over 6 months of supply, it really is no longer a neutral or a balanced market. It's a buyer's market.
So this is the last 7 days. Okay. So I got this week. I took a screenshot last night. So 7 days from today back. Okay. This is the status of the Stellar MLS. There's 3 MLSs in Florida that we're part of. Stellar MLS is the biggest one. It goes from Daytona Beach over to Tampa, down to Cape Coral, and over to like St. Lucie County. So it's the center of the state. It's the largest area. The new listings that hit the market, you have 12,117 new listings that hit the market. Now, below that, you're going to see price increase. A lot of that is the builders. They'll come on like coming soon. And then once they go live with the property, the price hits and it raises. So a lot of those price increases are going to be new builder property. But one that really points out is look at the price decreases. Okay, that means these are properties that were on the market and they decreased the prices, 12,801 in 7 days. Okay. Now back on the market. What's that mean? That means the property was under contract and either the mortgage fell apart, insurance might've been too high. They backed out, inspection didn't go well, something. Okay. Now sold is okay. They closed, 4,500 closed. But what's that 4,500 compared to 12,000 new ones and 12,000 price decreases? It's a third, right? Now, expired. Expired were under contract for 6 months or more. Okay, that just means the contracts ran out. They didn't sell. 1,214. Most of them are going to go back on the market. Leased is just leases that were done. Now, pending. There's 7,444 pending. Okay, now that just means they're pending. They're under contract. But what happened to the ones under contract in the last 7 days before that? 2,500 went back on the market. That's a third, right? More than a third. Now, temporary off the market just means people are on the market and they said, you know what, let's paint the house, let's do some work, and we're going to go back on. They're just doing something, fixing up, doing something. Withdrawn just means they've been on the market and they kind of given up. They still have a contract with the agent if they decide to put it back on and sell it, but it's just withdrawn. They're really not wanting to sell it. They're going to let it sit and ride out, most likely. And then cancel. These are people who are having issues with their agent, not happy with the service, something going on, and they literally cancel the listing, and then the agent released them from the contract so they could relist or do something else. So a lot of the canceled and a lot of the expireds are coming back on in addition to the 12,000 in the next couple of weeks or next couple of days. That's the numbers in Florida.
Numbers are staggering.
Numbers don't lie, man. This is what I'm telling you. If you see this and you're a buyer, you're looking at this and saying, oh my God, I'm offering $15,000, $20,000 less. That's what happened to us right now. If I'm the buyer and I'm representing a buyer on this, it's the opposite. Hey, we're going to go in. We're going to go 25,000 less, 20,000 less. Look, they're up against 12,000 new homes just this week. They got 12,000 price drops. They got to make a deal, right? That's the buyer side. These numbers don't lie, man. This here is what's coming. Now, this isn't even public knowledge. This doesn't come out for a month and a half till NAR reports it. But we're seeing it in the last 7 days. And this has been like this, for the last 4 months, it was 6,000 a week, 7, 8,000 a week, 9,000. And then eventually it hit 10, 11. Look, we're at 12 now over the last 3-4 months. And the closings are going down. It was 6,000 closings, 7,000 closings, 4,000. Now we're at 4. So less deals are closing. More houses are hitting the market. More deals are falling apart. 2,500 fell apart. So those percentages are getting worse as we're going forward. And that's just a fact. And that's why you can predict it. That's why you know what's coming. Because these numbers, numbers are numbers, man. Stats are stats. I don't care. There's no emotion here. And that's what matters.
I want to talk about the article. It talks about vulnerable areas. Now, you and I have had many conversations. You think there's a lot of vulnerable areas, but here, Gainesville, vulnerable. We can just look at this, a university town, Palm Bay, Melbourne. Look, this is Space Coast. The Space Coast economy is linked to aerospace and defense. So we've got things going on there. Insurance costs are the cause of concern. And then we've got Lakeland, Winter Haven. This area's rapid price appreciation hasn't kept pace with local wage.
Every one of those areas is being overbuilt, and the migration has cut down by 50%. People aren't coming, and they're still building as if they were. That's the problem in those areas for sure.
What happened to all the Wall Street analysts that are working for these builders? Are they fired?
They should have never been hired, if you ask me.
Let's talk about Miami, because this article also says that Miami's an anomaly, that Miami is a fascinating exception to the trend, showing a strong price growth, 9.1% year over year, July 24, demonstrating diverse and complex nature of Florida's real estate, its unique economic drivers and appeal to international investors set it apart. What's the draw for Miami?
Yeah, well, Miami is always driven by luxury apartments and luxury buyers and foreign investment to put their money and get away from inflation and things like that. But the problem is the investors have slowed up. Slowed up tremendously. Miami hasn't shifted yet, but I'll tell you, I have agents and I know agents down there. It's not looking good. Like there's a lot hitting the market and there's not much going. There's not a lot of transactions happening. There's not a lot of offers being made. It hasn't caught up to the news yet. Miami always been an anomaly, but I think this time around, we're at a critical phase, I guess, as we speak right now. And one thing I want to share with you, if you go back to our very, very first video, year and a half ago, I could have wrote that article. If you listen to what I said in that video, I saw this coming. I predicted it, man. It's there. And how did I predict it? I'm not a magician. The fact is, again, the numbers won't lie. You got to see where it's going. If you look at Miami's inventory and you look at Miami's transactions falling apart, and you look at what's going on that aren't closing, it's at a critical phase, and a lot of those buildings down there aren't worth it. I mean, what you call it, the governor of Florida, DeSantis, they just called a special session that they're going to have to address the condo and the insurance crisis. I don't know what's going to happen from it. They had one before, didn't do anything, but they're addressing it now. It just came out announced. I think they're doing it by the end of the month. But Miami's shifting. The areas that I see, the top 5 areas that I see that are coming down would be Miami, because Miami, like I said, is driven by the luxury segment and is cooling off. The foreign investment slowed. Tampa, St. Petersburg. Okay. There's a high inventory of new construction. They're building and building. People have slowed down, and that's pushing the home prices down, the existing home. Because the builders, what they're doing, just got a thing from Lennar. They're offering $90,000 off a property, $10,000 seller assist, and 5% commission to the broker. A year and a half ago, they were offering the broker 2%, and they weren't discounting anything. They were fighting over the houses. Orlando, okay? Orlando has a shift in demand. Okay, there's a lot of remote workers that were in Orlando, and they're being called back into the office. I have one right now, Vero Beach. The woman needs to sell the house. I'm meeting with her Monday to sign the documents. She needs to go back to the city because they called her back to work. She has a beautiful home in Vero Beach. Really doesn't want to go, but she has to. So she's going back to the city up in New York to go to work.
So she works in New York.
She works in New York. She was remote. She bought a place in Vero Beach. This was 2 years ago. She's been living in Vero Beach, loves it, works here. And now they called her back into the office, and if she wants to keep her job and work for them, she needs to go back to the city. And
what does she do, Phil?
I didn't get that far into the conversation. I know she's in some kind of analytics. She does analytics. I'm not sure what industry. I'll find out next time we talk. I'll let you know. It's one of my agent's clients that I did a Zoom call with this to get everything together. So I didn't get into that deep with her, but Monday I'll know when I go over everything with her and sign the docs. And then last but not least, Fort Myers and Cape Coral, like that's the area you're talking about there. That's a little bit south of Lakeland and all that. That's Polk County, but down at Fort Myers and Cape Coral, the price declines are due to rebuilding after the hurricane. You have a lot of pre-construction being rebuilt, and then you have a lot of overbuilding on the new construction there too. And there's a lot of renovated and rebuilt houses, and then you have the fear, with these 2 hurricanes hitting down there, there's a lot of that shook the market. That second hurricane that came through really shook the market down there. Things like really slowed up.
I remember during the GFC being in Orlando, and it was right in the thick of the crisis. Maybe it was 2009. They were actually advertising condos in and around the area of Orlando. You could get a 2-bedroom condo for like $30,000. You had to pay cash. Fort Myers was building like gangbusters. I know somebody that did something in Fort Myers, ended up losing their shirt, buying condominiums down there that had never been occupied. The AC was never turned on when the market hit the fan. They had mold growing off the walls 4 inches. They actually demoed brand new buildings. And then I guess it was probably, several years, 4 or 5 years later, and all they were doing was building Fort Myers. Then it was the eye of the hurricane site and was leveled. So, I mean, I guess the question that really comes, Phil, and you live in Florida, when is enough enough? I mean, when do people see when you take, and this is what I see that is kind of different, but with Florida now than it was back in 08, or before the 08 crisis. Things are still affordable. So the housing affordability index pre-global financial or great financial crisis of 2008, even though prices had hit all-time highs in housing, it was still very affordable, right? You could make it on a median income. You could buy a median priced home. And Florida was no different, right? You had a lot of retirees. You had a period of time where you didn't see a whole lot of hurricane activity. But now when you look at prices at all-time highs, you're talking about $15,000. I hope your seller gets it. Losing that deal for a buyer that walked for $15,000. I would have taken that money and ran. I'd have put the money on a credit card if I had to get out, because I think it is just the beginning of a massive crisis in Florida. And, so when you look at, all the bad weather events that have happened, the insurance companies that have pulled out of the state, Florida needing to look at, doing their own insurance, backing their own property insurance for the people that live there. And if you have a loan on something, by the way, you have a mortgage, you have to have property insurance. You can't elect to not have it. What's the future for Florida?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Now, the thing is, back in 08, your affordability index was 60,000 a year. Household income 60,000 a year could buy a house. The index now just came out. You got to make 109,000 a year to buy the same house today that you would have bought in 08. So the other problem is, your HOA, if you have one, your taxes and your insurance are now adding up to more than the mortgage payment. So, it's the cost of it is out of whack. I agree with you. There's people leaving Florida. There's never been as many people leaving Florida than there is right now. As many are coming in, there's more leaving. That's like the first time ever. And what I'm running into, a lot of the properties that I'm selling are people who bought the homes back in 2007, 2006, 2008, and they bought the house for 180 and they're trying to sell them now for 350, 340. And they're the ones who are realizing, you know what? I got to come down in price. I got to drop it another 20 grand to sell it. I just sold one. We were at 289. Market's 289. We dropped it to 269. We sold it within a week. We went under the market. The woman bought the house for $170,000. So she was okay with losing 20 grand because it was really equity that just appreciated from 2000. She bought that one in 2018. So
it was phantom.
That's what I'm saying. That's the people who can get out. Now, like the woman that refinanced, that has no equity, she doesn't want to get out with that. Now, I told her the same thing. Might get stuck with this, but maybe take it.
And that could be the case with 30 million people that bought since 2019.
Yeah. There's more people who bought since 2019 and now that are in trouble. If you bought prior to 19, like 18, 17 and prior, you have equity. You have room to come down.
Which is to my point of it doesn't matter what your interest rate is. Doesn't matter what your mortgage rate is. If your house isn't worth what you owe, you're screwed.
100%. 100%. And
no one's going to buy it just because you have a good rate if it's more than what it's worth.
Coming. That's what happened 07, 08. The banks were underwater 20, 30 grand. People walked away. There was no equity. They had nothing to lose. Foreclosures, short sales. But now let's go back to what you were saying as an agent. If you want to be in this business, just working with buyers and sellers isn't going to work through this market. You're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to work with the banks with REOs. You're going to have to get involved in short sales.
Let's talk about Florida employment, Phil. The Tampa Bay Times published an article in December showcasing 10 companies, and this is just Tampa-based companies that laid off the most people in Tampa last year. And are you hearing from buyers or sellers? I mean, you just mentioned you're one seller that needs to go back to work in office in New York from Florida and needs to sell her house. But are you hearing from buyers and sellers that they have been laid off or that they're concerned of losing their job?
I haven't heard too much about concern losing their job. It's mostly people going back into the office and going back to where they're from. That's a lot of the stuff that I'm having. And in the industries here
to keep a job, to keep the
job they have. Yeah. A lot of mobile workers came to Florida, 100%, like the from home and the outside of the office workers. Now, again, with the jobs in Florida, you have the three areas. You have tourism and hospitality, which we talked about many times. Technology, a lot of technology companies have come to Florida, especially now. And also construction, which I believe is going to be slowing up. That's going to be the major one it takes to hit the construction. Now, one thing that happened, with these fires in Los Angeles, in California, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm wondering if a lot of the people who've been devastated and are kind of, have to rebuild, if they're going to rebuild, or, maybe some of them may come look at Florida. Maybe they're fed up with some of the politics and some of the things that are going on out there. And with all the red tape and things that are going to be there, that might increase a little bit of a influx, like a second wave of California people coming out to Florida. I'm waiting to see. It's too soon to know. But I'm wondering if that's going to happen, if that's going to affect.
Well, the difference is, though, you have a completely different climate. It is freaking hot.
100%.
It is freaking Hades hot in Florida.
Absolutely.
And, when you hit summertime, it's absolutely miserable in most of the state. Where in California, you have perfect weather pretty much year round all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. I've also heard, you talk about Miami and you not buying into the fact that it's such an anomaly that it won't crash. I do follow commercial a lot, and commercial leasing, especially in Miami, is down. The
Huge.
rents, they're trying to get even more rents, but what really is shocking is industrial vacancies are climbing. And, in a time when, with the Amazon effect, where people have literally broke out their businesses and they're renting warehouses so that they can be a distribution center to get goods to consumers faster. When we start seeing issues in the industrial space, that's a telltale sign of a
Yeah.
much bigger macroeconomic problem. What are you seeing as far as stores and restaurants in
Yeah.
your travels? Are they
It's
full?
well, everything's consolidating industrial wise. I mean, they're all consolidating. They're trying to do the opposite of what they did expanding. Restaurants, restaurants. The problem with the restaurant industry is their cost is going like out of whack. Restaurants are still full. People are living off of credit. I mean, they really are. Now, Miami, you have a very affluent community, very wealthy community. Most of the people there are in the technology industry. Their incomes are protected. They're making money. They're in an industry that's actually growing and expanding, cybersecurity, things like that. Um, so Miami, that's part of the anomaly in Miami. Miami, you go to Brickell. Brickell is the most congested per capita. It's more than Manhattan. Many people don't know that. The 33131 zip code. There's more per capita, like in the buildings, than anywhere in the country. And a lot of that is international money. International investment is Miami. And that soon as that dries up, that's slowed up big time. Big time. And that's going to be the linchpin. The international money stopping coming into the residential side. Now, like you're saying, the commercial lease space, it's empty. A lot of stuff, social media, like online. People are doing things online now. Like my agents, like you said, they don't come into my office. They work from home. It's not just our businesses; it's every business doing that. They're downsizing. They're lowering the overhead.
Let's talk about tenants and landlords. I hear that due to the recent hurricanes like Helene, that it's a complete mess. So what I want to do is I want to play this clip, Phil, and then talk about it.
Tonight, though, to our coverage of local renters in the Tampa Bay area now feeling the impacts of Hurricane Helene. ABC Action News reporter Adam Walser tonight looking into the rights that renters have under Florida law.
Thousands of Tampa Bay area residents are no longer able to live in their homes due to extensive flooding damage by Hurricane Helene. And we wanted to know, do tenants still have to pay rent, and can they break their lease? So we went to a legal expert to break down Florida law.
If the unit's a complete loss, then the tenant has the right to terminate the lease altogether. If it's not a complete loss, it's a partial loss, then essentially the tenant can prorate the rent.
For example, if a 3-bedroom home rents for $2,100 and one bedroom is unlivable, the tenant would still pay $1,400. Hatchie says because hurricane damage is so widespread, it may take landlords months to get units repaired. How big a mess is this?
It's a pretty big mess. Ultimately, there was already very high demand for rental properties. I believe for every one unit, there's 10 applicants.
With more homeowners whose houses were damaged entering the rental market, demand will grow even more. Emily now has no long-term place to go.
My living situation is I'm at a hotel down the street until I can find a new place.
Phil, what's going on with the rental market? Are there houses available? Are you seeing people living in substandard conditions?
It's a little bit of a mix of both. That's all very true information. One thing I recommend for a tenant, renter's insurance. Renter's insurance covers you. If something happens in the building, you'll be able to get compensated for hotel stay, things like that. Always in Florida, it's cheap. It's not even that expensive, but it's good to have it. It protects you from robberies. If somebody breaks in, it protects you from a leak. It protects you from a fire for your contents. It's pretty cheap. Now, I don't know if it's going to stay cheap with everything going on, but having renter's insurance solves the problem. But the rents have been coming down significantly. Inventory is up on rentals, and rents have been coming down. That's another thing with the investors that with trying to get out of the houses with the equity. They realize rents are coming down, and costs are going up. Same thing. The HOA fees, the taxes, the insurance are going up, but the rents are coming down, and the profit margin they had is dwindling away, and they're wanting to get out. That's what I'm facing with a lot of clients as well.
Yeah. So are there any rent control laws in Florida that protects from price gouging? I mean, you say rents are coming down, but is there anything to protect a tenant from their landlord saying, hey, I'm raising my rent $1,000 a month because I had to do all these renovations?
There's a minimum increase. There's a maximum increase you can do per rental. I believe it's 5 or 6%, 5 or 6%, I think, per renewal.
Florida also has a new squatters law, I think went into effect last year, June or July or something like that, that could affect renters without leases. I know here in Maryland, it's a mess. So squatters have a lot of rights, and it can take 7-8 months to get somebody that is in the house under an unlawful detainer kind of situation where they don't have a lease, they can't produce one. Some of them make them up, fake leases. But this one article here on flcourier.com, it says a new Florida law that went into effect on July 1, empowering the property owners to remove unauthorized occupants, otherwise known as squatters, from their dwellings. But its language might inadvertently affect some types of types of renters. So the legislation allows law enforcement officers to exercise the immediate removal, even arrest of unauthorized occupants without a court process pertaining that the property owner has filed a verified complaint. So know anything about this law?
I do. Very interesting. One of the reasons this law went into effect was less than a mile away from my office. There was a house that was somebody broke in, squatted, created a fake lease, and said they were renting it. It was just remodeled. The woman bought it, fixed it. It was on NBC News. It was like a Nightline or something. It's crazy. It's less than a mile from my office. People broke in, created a fake lease, and said they had it. Well, they destroyed the house. $40,000 worth of damage, holes in the wall. It was all over. It was on the news. You could see the newscast. That was one of the things that prompted this. So what happened was the law states that if you prepare a fake lease, it's actually a felony now. You will be charged with a felony. And if there's a proper complaint and the owner shows that that's not them who prepared the lease, because what they're doing is they're making up fake leases and signing them. They're not even the right names. And they're saying, oh, well, I rented this from this person, and that person doesn't exist. And that was going on like rampant. And that's what this law took care of. Now, another thing in Florida you have a lot, and I have this with one of the tenants I'm selling the house now. The tenant is on the lease, and on the lease, any adult has to be named. And what happens is right now, like a tenant has her daughter living there and 3 kids, and another person's living there, renting a room out. See, those kind of things happen a lot in Florida. And landlords, up until now, really, you have to go through a civil court to handle that. And at this point now, there's damage being done. One house I just sold, it was 20 grand worth of damage. The guy had to fix it. We just got it sold down in Zephyr Hills. And was like one of these situations where people moved in, property management didn't really monitor it. People came into the house and they had to end up evicting them, and they wrecked the house. So that's what this law protects against. It's not going to take, landlords can't use this law, excessively. They can't take advantage of it. The law protects the landlord from tenants who have more rights than the landlord. That, like with the new laws coming out, it gives tenants a lot more rights, even the eviction times. The eviction times have been extended. Their time to respond and things like that have been extended to protect the tenants a little more, especially with COVID. Think about COVID. Tenants didn't have to pay for a year, but the landlord, they made the policy where, hey, okay, tenant doesn't have to pay, but how comes they didn't make a policy so the landlord didn't have to pay their mortgage for that year? You know what I mean? Like, they threw the landlord under the bus, and they killed a lot of small landlords.
Disgusting. Yeah, I think that was horrible.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't give one side a break and not the other,
Yeah, you're giving more money with federal unemployment for that period of time. I think it was, they were making $600-700 more a week. They were getting, stimulus checks in the mail, but they didn't have to pay their rent. That should have been a requirement. Hey, we're going to give you this extra money because you need to pay your freaking rent.
They're trying to kill the small landlords, man. They're trying to kill them.
disgusting. Yep, taking property rights away from people, and that's
Absolutely.
yep. Well, Phil, man, I always appreciate our conversation, my friend, and all of your information's in the show notes below, and we thank you so much for continuing to contribute to our podcast.
Remember, numbers don't lie. People do, man.
That's right. Well, we'll see you soon.
All right. Catch you later.
Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.